Night ahead for most. Some rain for Wales and the West, a low of 7. Tomorrow, heavy showers and strong winds moving into Northern Ireland and Scotland. Mainly sunny elsewhere with a high of 23 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lisa Aziz.
This is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation, the Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Well, nearly a month into the Boris Johnson premiership, we've had some real tough talking. We're going to do or die. We're leaving on the 31st of October. Lots of talk about no deal. An announcement yesterday that free movement will cease with no deal at midnight on the dot of the 31st of October. And today, Stephen Barclay telling us that from the 1st of September, British representatives will not attend meetings in Brussels that are not seen to be relevant. So, if you're a Brexiteer, it's all going swimmingly. Or is it? Because last night, and we learnt this at about 7 o'clock last night, Boris Johnson wrote a 4-page letter to Donald Tusk, the boss, of course, of the European Council. And one or two of the things that he said in this letter may be a surprise to you, because he begins by saying that the government will work with energy and determination to achieve an agreement. This is our highest priority. So let's be clear. The government's highest priority is to get a withdrawal agreement. But, of course, it is different to Mrs May's withdrawal agreement. He goes on to say the changes we seek relate primarily to the backstop. He goes on to explain why the backstop is unacceptable. He says it should be replaced with a commitment to put in place such arrangements as far as possible before the end of the transition period. Transition period? I thought you said, Boris, in the leadership contest we were leaving on the 31st of October. I've not heard him mention a transition period until then. And he finishes positively by saying the UK is ready to move quickly. I am confident our Parliament would be able to act rapidly if we reached a satisfactory agreement that did not contain the backstop. Now, there are some in the British press who portray this as Boris's salvo to Brussels. But actually, and here's the remarkable thing, nowhere in this letter does he say at any single point, we are prepared to leave on the 31st of October with no deal. Do you remember that documentary Inside Europe recently where we were all quite shocked that Monsieur Barnier said at no point did Mrs May put no deal on the table as part of her negotiating position, and yet here we have a Dear Donald letter from the Prime Minister in which he pretty much adopts a similar kind of negotiating tactic to Theresa May. So I would say to those of you in the press who think this is a salvo that I think you may find actually it's more of a misfire. What is the response to it been? Well, Donald Tusk says the backstop is an insurance to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland unless and until an alternative is found. Oh, that's a bit different. I thought his defence of the backstop was absolute. I'm seeing a shift here. I'm seeing a change. And even Angela Merkel says that actually, we could change the political declaration. That's the bit that comes after the withdrawal agreement. And Boris himself talking about renegotiating everything, getting it sorted out during the transition period. So what is Boris Johnson saying? He's saying he doesn't want this withdrawal agreement, he wants a withdrawal agreement. But the only change he's seeking is to the backstop. Now, look, my view on that is very, very simple. I mean, if the Prime Minister's highest priority is to pay £39 billion to the European Union, to take us into a transition period on the 1st of November, to maintain open borders for possibly many years to come, to continue with the jurisdiction of a European court and not to take back our fishing waters, I think it is completely and utterly wrong, because even if we have officially left the EU on that date, it will be Brexit in name only. Or am I wrong? Is this just Boris Johnson going through the motions? Is he just pretending to try and negotiate with Brussels, whilst all the time he actually intends to take us out on the 31st of October with no deal, with a clean break Brexit. I'm asking you, with another withdrawal agreement in the offing, has Boris gone soft on Brexit? If you think no, getting a withdrawal agreement is right, call 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, hang on a second, this isn't what Boris Johnson said during the campaign. It's not what he said since he became Prime Minister. He has gone soft. He's Mrs May, Mark too. If that's how you feel, text to 84850. Or perhaps you're simply not sure. But if you want to make some predictions, you can, using the hashtag Farage and LBC, at LBC. And of course, YouTubers, Facebookers and Twitterers, you can watch us and you can comment there too. Andrew from Congleton says to me, it is becoming increasingly clear that Brexiteers have no allies in the UK Parliament. Boris is going to reheat Mrs May's deal. Andrew, I think he did that last night with his letter at 7 o'clock that went off. You know, this is him going for the withdrawal agreement, just with a few tweaks. So he'll call it a withdrawal agreement, not the withdrawal agreement. What does Mark in the Wirral make of it? Mark, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I make of it what perhaps it should always have been. Now, there is a growing groundswell in Northern Ireland because Northern Ireland is the key to Brexit. It never has been anything other than the key to Brexit. My belief is this, that what we're looking at is ramping up for a Northern Ireland, at the least, a Northern Ireland only backstop. Yeah. I mean, I guess there are two possibilities, Mark, aren't there? One is that that the EU throws Ireland under the bus. The other is that Boris Johnson throws Northern Ireland under the bus. I mean, personally, I would prefer him to do the honest thing and be the big man and actually do what should be happening, and that is this: declare a Northern Ireland unification referendum as soon as possible, because people in the UK, and there have been various polls to suggest this, Northern Ireland is another country.
Is it?
It is another country. In reality, it is over the sea.
Hang on, Mark. Constitutionally and legally, it is fully a part of the United Kingdom.
Indeed it is, but if you ask a lot of people on the island of Britain, they will actually say Northern Ireland doesn't actually mean a lot to us.
Oh, I see.
There are only 7 MPs, maybe 10 people in Parliament that Northern Ireland means a lot to, and that is the DUP, and them alone.
So do we just say, Mark, we can't jettison Northern Ireland because some people in England don't like them, can we? Surely a referendum on Irish unification, that would have to be held in the Republic of Ireland as well, wouldn't it?
Indeed, according to the Good Friday Agreement, which I've read, that is so. But it would be extremely embarrassing for Leo Varadkar to turn that down once Britain has actually put it in place and had it.
And what happens, Mark, when they have the referendum in Northern Ireland that you want, when they say we wish to stay part of the United Kingdom, as I think they would?
OK, well, in which case they have to leave fully with us. Now, I would have thought that if it was a case of the options as they are in reality, that there is going to be some sort of freight border with checks, or there is going to be a withdrawal agreement which is Northern Ireland only, or they can have unification.
Well, a backstop for Northern Ireland only is something that the Prime Minister could do. But would he want to be seen as the Conservative... After all, Mark, it's called the Conservative and Unionist Party. Would Boris want to be seen to be the person that effectively put them in a different constitutional place? I doubt it. Mark, I'm going to move on and go to Brian, who's calling from Cognac in France. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening, Nigel. I wish I'd have known you were going to Guernsey, if that's where I live, and I'd have I'd have loved to have met you.
Well, I was there for a couple of days, Brian, but there we are. I couldn't visit every pub whilst I was there.
Well, it'd been nice to buy you a pint.
Well, thank you. Now, has Boris gone soft, or does this all make perfect sense?
I don't think he has. I think he said the withdrawal agreement is dead. I mean, really, I think what you said, I'm in line with you. That basically, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever to pay $39 billion and then start talking about trade terms. It's
but
crazy.
Brian, bear with me, because if you read the full 4-page letter, the only changes to Mrs May's withdrawal agreement that Boris Johnson are seeking pertain to the backstop, and therefore I have to conclude that he's happy to pay $39 billion, and he's happy. In fact, he talks about us going into a transition period on the 1st of November. And, Brian, I don't think that's what he campaigned on.
No, I don't think it is. And personally, myself, I think he's trying to quell the staunch Remainers and staunch undemocratic MPs to try and get a no deal through. Which, to be fair, when you say no deal, it means leaving the EU.
Of course,
deal.
Brian, I know that's just
one thing I'd really like to ask you, Nigel, if you'll just bear with me a little bit.
Yeah.
When you pay the EU every week, what's it, 350 billion? How much does it actually cost for all the MPs, all the researchers to bail out Greece and various other things? Does it cost somewhere in about 4 times the amount which we actually pay in to pay for all these armies of people?
Well, hang on, Brian. I mean, we are one of the net contributors to the European Union. So, I mean, this year we're paying in about 16% of the European Union's budget. Germany's paying in far more. Brian, you can argue about waste, you can argue about cost. We've been net contributors virtually ever since we joined this union. Brian, let me ask you, is Boris going to get us out on the 31st of October?
I truly believe he is. If he isn't, it's finished, and the Conservative Party have finished. And to be fair, he's frightened to death of you, Nigel. And you and Rees-Mogg are the only 2 politicians I think should be heading this Brexit negotiations. They're the only 2 people. Having said that, as you said, Rees-Mogg voted for the deal at 378.
Well, and this is absolutely, and this is my nagging doubt, Brian, about Boris Johnson, is on the 3rd time of asking, he voted for the backstop. That's right, Boris, you who were telling us how unacceptable the backstop is, and Boris voted for the backstop. Brian, I thank you. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:15, and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
The Prime Minister says despite EU officials dismissing his letter calling for the backstop to be scrapped in a new Brexit deal, he's still optimistic and will go at it with oomph to get an agreement. A 20-year-old man's appeared in court and denied murdering PC Andrew Harper in Berkshire last Thursday. Rail passengers using the East Coast Main Line are being advised not to travel this weekend, which is a bank holiday in England, because of widespread engineering works. LBC weather: showers easing in the northeast of England, leaving a dry night ahead for most. Some rain for Wales and the west, a low of 7 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Louise Knight, and it's slow on the clockwise M25 towards a van that's broken down between Potters Bar and the A10. That's junction 24 and 25. One lane's closed. Anti-clockwise, it's stop-start this evening from Heathrow at 14 to Chertsey at 11. Now, there are long queues if you're heading out of town on the A13. It's heavy from the Canning Town flyover to an accident on the Lodge Avenue flyover. That's also affecting the southbound North Circular towards Beckton. It's then slow on the A13 through Goresbrook to the earlier accident at Ferry Lane, although all lanes have reopened. A collapsed manhole on the A40 is causing queues out of town from Savoy Circus at Acton to the Medway underpass at Perryville, and it's worth avoiding the high road in Loughton because of emergency repairs.
This is LBC.
Food freedom isn't just about knowing exactly what your favourite curry is. It's about pretending that tonight's the night you will finally try something different on the menu. Before bottling it at the last minute and ordering the one you always get. Because deep down you know exactly what your favourite curry is.
Go on then.
Fire up the Deliveroo app and find your food freedom today.
This is LBC.
Some things are just so confusing, like alternative milks. What do social influences do? And why is fake news even a thing? Get past the confusion with the Confused.com Beat Your Car Renewal Quote Guarantee. If you can't beat your renewal quote on a like-for-like basis, you'll get the difference plus £20. Tell us what confuses you and enter to win £1,000 at lbc.co.uk. Don't be confused. BeConfused.com.
I had been to another dentist and had long conversations about bone grafting.
At Darwood and Tanner, our experience with dental implants often means bone grafting is not necessary.
When I met Andrew and he looked at the various x-rays, he said, you do not need to have bone grafts. He can work around places where there is no bone or there is little bone.
Download your information pack at darwoodandtanner.co.uk today. Your smile is our healthy obsession.
As a busy mum, you're juggling loads of things. And when your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics to help them get better. For things like sore throats, coughs and colds, you can get advice from your local pharmacy. And you don't need an appointment. To find your nearest pharmacy, search NHS Choices.
It's never nice missing out. But millions are doing just that by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB is here to help. They offer interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. So if you're one of the millions of people who are missing out, talk to TSB. Terms and conditions apply.
Summer's finally here, and at the BMW Summer event, we're celebrating with a wide range of models available to drive away today, so your perfect BMW couldn't be closer. Search BMW Summer Event or visit your local BMW centre before the end of August to find your perfect BMW and explore our range of tailored finance options. BMW UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. BMW Finance is subject to status for UK customers over 18 only. Guarantees may be required. T's and C's apply.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
So what is it Boris Johnson wants? Well, he says a withdrawal agreement is our highest priority, just not the withdrawal agreement. He wants to get rid of the backstop and keep the rest of it. And we kind of missed this during the campaign, but there was a clue when he was visiting a farm, speaking to a farming community in Wales back in July. This is what he had to say.
Some of the changes and adjustments that are going to be necessary in the run-up to October the 31st, and a lot of which we've already done, will be crucial anyway if we're going to come out of the customs union, come out of the single market, as we must in the course of the next couple of years.
In the course of the next couple of years. And that got lost, didn't it? It was in the early part of the campaign, on a farm in Wales, and by the time Boris won, with a majority of 2-1, everyone thought, we're leaving on the 31st of October, and I quote, do or die. But actually, he's reheated, I think, the conversation he had with those Welsh farmers. And I think people are not getting what they voted for, potentially. It could, of course, all be a clever ruse. It could be Boris just going through the motions. And maybe it'll get slapped down and there'll be no give in Brussels. But I have seen a slight change in Donald Tusk's language today. And I'm asking, is he losing his nerve? Is he going soft? Boris had better not be trying to promote Theresa May's surrender treaty, otherwise it's the end of the Conservative Party. Yes, well said. It's not a withdrawal agreement, it is actually a treaty. Monsieur Barnier walks around Brussels with it leather-bound under his arm, Helen says. Do you think Boris can hoodwink us? No chance. This treaty is dire in all its forms. I won't even vote for him. And Charles on Facebook says, Boris won't deliver, he'll give in to the EU. Mrs May, number 2. Charles, even if he does, there's still no guarantee he would get it through Parliament. John is a new caller from King's Langley. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Nigel. I think he's going soft.
You do?
Yes, I think he's going soft. I thought he was going to be hard. I thought he was now holding the trump card. I got the impression he was doing well. But now it looks as though he's going to give in, doesn't it?
Well,
he's another Theresa May.
Do you really think so?
I think our only hope is that Donald Trump gives him a lecture when he meets him at the G7 meeting on how to go and how to negotiate.
Now, that's really interesting, John, that you raised that, because I talked about the Dear Donald letter. Well, there's going to be a Dear Donald meeting that'll take place down in Biarritz. And when Trump understands that Boris's highest priority is to get a deal and a transition period that might last 2 years. That means that the trade deal that Trump's been talking about, and indeed John Bolton has been suggesting we could even do it sector by sector and build in it over time, that would mean it'd be at least another 2 years before that, at least another 2 years before that could come into effect. So, yeah, I think Johnny's going to have some interesting conversations with Trump, isn't he?
Well, I hope so.
And what do you think about the idea? I mean, Donald Trump wants to buy Greenland. It's been suggested that Trump might now bid for the United Kingdom, John.
Well, I suppose America did buy Alaska, didn't they, originally?
They did. They bought lots of territory there. I don't see them buying the UK, but hey. John, thank you for your call. Simon is a new caller from Orpington. Good evening, Simon.
Yeah, hi, Nigel. Good to speak with you.
So,
Nigel, I think what Boris is doing is what Brexiteers hoped he wouldn't. He's clearly going to reheat the withdrawal agreement. I think he's boxed himself in on the letter. He hasn't given him any room for negotiation on other stuff. If the EU was to get rid of the backstop, Boris will take the deal, and I think he'll probably get it through Parliament. I think, however, it's actually in the long run going to work out in Boris's favour, because the EU aren't going to renegotiate at this stage. And let's be honest, why would they? They've got Remainers working on their behalf in Parliament with this vote of no confidence. So at the moment, they may as well just watch this vote of no confidence.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. Simon, I agree with that.
And if it goes in their favour, then there's no Brexit at all.
I agree with that, Simon. They will wait until Corbyn moves the motion of no confidence. That's what Brussels will do. But if they can't get that through, then don't you think that the EU may be prepared to change the wording on the backstop?
I think at that point they might be leaving it just a bit too late. I actually think what's going to happen is the timing. People are going to want a deal. Boris wants a deal. The EU wants a deal. I actually think in terms of the timing, that's what's going to push us over on the 31st. Boris has no route out on the 31st. The number of times he said it, Mrs. May fell because she didn't stick to it. We have to be out on the 31st. So I still believe we're going for a WTO exit.
Do you? And so you still think Boris has the resolve to see this through?
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, it will come down to, will he destroy the Conservative Party? And the answer is no, he won't. But if he doesn't get us out on the 31st, that's exactly what he's done.
Yeah.
And will be the shortest. He'll be the shortest Prime Minister in history.
Yeah, and the Conservative Party is everything to these people. It really is. Simon, an interesting analysis, and I get what Simon's saying. I mean, that is in the end, I mean, the one thing Boris's advisors will be telling him is if you don't leave on the 31st of October, the consequences for the future of the Tory party are pretty dire. John is a new caller from Milton Keynes. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, Boris Johnson, up until now, he'd seemed to be the hard man of Brexit. He's not quite looking that way to me tonight, John.
Well, I think he'll probably deliver if he's not stopped by other politicians and by the vote of no confidence. I think he'll deliver what he said he'd deliver, but he might get stopped in Parliament. But Jeremy Corbyn can't be trusted with anything. I wouldn't trust him with a piggy bank, to be honest. And, he'll say anything that the union bosses tell him to say to get into power. Once he's there, he's going to absolutely wreck the country if he ever got into power.
Well, I tell you what, John, let's talk about Boris, all right, rather than Jeremy Corbyn today. When Boris puts in this letter that leaving with a withdrawal agreement is our highest priority, isn't that rather a surprise?
Well, it is, but I'd rather leave with no agreement and then negotiate, to be honest. And all the people I talk to, they know exactly what they voted for, to leave the European Union. With no deal is the best position, because then we can negotiate from a better position than we are in now.
But John, this time last week, you may well have thought that was Boris's position too. But now he's saying that getting a withdrawal agreement is his highest priority. He's going soft, John, isn't he?
Well, I certainly hope not, to be honest. And it'll have to end in an election. And if it does end in an election, then Boris is probably going to have to bring you in to help him get what we want in the end, which wouldn't be a bad position, really, would it, Nigel?
Well, John, let's see. I don't know. At the moment, they think they can do without the Brexit Party, but hey, time will tell. John, thank you. Colin on Facebook says the ERG have told Boris they will vote down the withdrawal agreement treaty again if it comes back to the table. This came from Mark Francois, apparently, someone who was speaking to him. Look, I in my own head, don't believe that the ERG are going to vote for this. I think those that were weak and gave in, who voted twice against it, but the third time voted for it, and that includes Boris Johnson and even Jacob Rees-Mogg, I don't see those numbers being whittled down. But what Boris may be banking on is that a lot more Labour people may well go for this withdrawal agreement because they represent Leave constituencies, and even if it is Brexit in name only, they can say, hey, look, we delivered. Andrew is calling from Manchester. Andrew, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I think Boris is going to get us out on the 31st, but I think we're looking at it a slightly different way. I think, really, what has he got to lose? Because, I mean, what he needs to do is make a lot of sound and fury about, sort of into the valley of death, road to 5,000 and all this sort of stuff. Boris on his horse with his with his saber rattling, etc. But actually, he's thinking afterwards. He's thinking about when the dust settles, what's going to happen. Because if he does all of this and he then turns around to them and says, but our highest priority is actually to get out. We do want a withdrawal agreement because, I mean, we've seen, especially in the last few days, the European Parliament getting a little bit more twitchy about no withdrawal agreement. What's he got to lose? If he does all of this and it works, wonderful.
Well, that's fine, Andrew.
Work, he saved the Tory party. He said himself that if we kick the can, we kick the bucket. If he gets Brino, something that you can sell as Brino, that's it, game over.
But why is it, Andrew, that nowhere in this letter does he say, if we cannot get this agreement, we will leave on WTO terms? It doesn't even feature in the letter. And surely, if you're in a hardball negotiation, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that what he's trying... he's said it enough times already that saying it more times might seem rather more like truculence than statesmanship.
Well, I have to say, I am surprised that getting a withdrawal agreement is his highest priority.
No, I mean, you could argue that he's playing some good cop, bad cop, except he's playing both parts.
So which bit do we believe, Andrew?
Well, I mean, I think we can accept that he wrote both articles before he started, so he's always had quite a sort of Janus approach to anything at best.
I think you're right, Andrew. I thank you for your call. David says to me on SMS, I previously criticised what I saw as your cynicism towards Boris, but I take that back. I now have my doubts about Boris. I guess I'm a sucker for Brexit optimism. Do you know what, David? I was the day that Theresa May gave that Lancaster House speech. I'm not making that mistake again. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:30 in time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
The Prime Minister says despite EU officials dismissing his letter calling for the backstop to be scrapped in a new Brexit deal, he's still optimistic and will go at it in the next few weeks to get an agreement. But Labour claims Boris Johnson's just making the whole standoff situation with Brussels much worse with his threats of a no deal. A man's appeared in court and denied murdering a police officer in Berkshire. 20-year-old Jed Foster from Reading's been charged over the death of PC Andrew Harper last week. Australia's key batsman Steve Smith has been ruled out of the third Ashes cricket test with England due to concussion. He was hit on the back of the neck by a fast ball from Jofra Archer in the second match of the series at Lord's. LBC weather, showers easing in the northeast of England, leaving a dry night ahead for most. Some rain for Wales and the southwest, a low of 7 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7. LBC.
Chairman of the Conservative Party and Conservative MP for Braintree, James Cleverly.
The Prime Minister has made it absolutely clear that if we cannot get a deal, then we are going to leave on the 31st of October, come what may.
And also that means freedom of movement will end.
Freedom of movement, the legal entity, freedom of movement, ends when we leave the European Union. But we have already made it clear that we value, welcome and love the people from the European Union who live and work and have families here in the UK. Prime Minister
If they don't, they'll have to go.
No.
Well, if they don't have to go, why do they need to sign up?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
Some things are just so confusing, like alternative milks. What do social influences do? And why is fake news even a thing? Get past the confusion with the Confused.com Beat Your Car Renewal Quote Guarantee. If you can't beat your renewal quote on a like-for-like basis, you'll get the difference plus £20. Tell us what confuses you and enter to win £1,000 at lbc.co.uk. Don't be confused. BeConfused.com.
50 years ago, we made a remarkable moment in history when man landed and walked on the moon for the first time. It's amazing what we can do when we think beyond limits. That's why Vodafone are giving small businesses what they need to discover their full potential with their new unlimited 5G data plans. Plus, with the OneNet virtual landline, you can be online anywhere. Go beyond limits and see what your business can achieve. Search Vodafone Business Unlimited.
We spoke to Nigel and Paulette from Lincoln about BT's Complete Wi-Fi.
The boys' bedrooms are both in the attic. They do a lot of gaming, they do a lot of streaming. Yeah. They get the same strength of signal now in the attic that we get downstairs.
It was always dropping out, and we don't have that now. The children still get frustrated when they lose at things, but that's completely different.
Nigel, Paulette and the boys are 4 more happy BT customers with complete Wi-Fi that guarantees a Wi-Fi signal in every room.
Up to 3 discs to guarantee Wi-Fi or £20 off your bill. Terms apply.
There are few greater joys in life than a sumptuous hot bath. Time to let the stresses of the day just melt away. Unless your plumbing goes. That's a recipe for a meltdown. But Trusted Trader are always on hand to help. TrustedTrader.com have lots of really lovely tradespeople who are vetted, reviewed and reliable. So if you need a plumber or other professionals in their trade, just relax. Trusted Trader are only a click away.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube
and decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle. And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling,
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of Off-Peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
£1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
So, your accountant does your audit for you, looks at your accounts, calculates your tax, stuff like that. But would you benefit from long-term advice, an expert to look at your business model and help your business grow? And most importantly, someone to look after you, the owner. At Barnes Rofe, our partners get to know their clients and want to become part of their team. Is it time to see what we can do for you? Arrange your free consultation at barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
As Boris Johnson writes to Donald Tusk and says a withdrawal agreement is our highest priority and makes no mention in the letter, no threat at all of us leaving with no deal. I'm asking, has Boris gone soft or is this all part of the game? Is he sort of saying, look, I went through the motions, they didn't give us anything, therefore we have to leave? Before I get back to that and your calls and your thoughts, in Italy, the Italian Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte, has been to the Italian President to resign. The coalition government, made up between Five Star and the League, has collapsed because the leader of the League, Mr. Salvini, has today withdrawn his support. Now, what does this mean? It either means elections in October in Italy, or that Mr. Conte, the Prime Minister, tries to cobble together a different kind of coalition. Everybody in Italy seems to be terrified of a general election, apart from Matteo Salvini, whose League party, which scored 17% in the general election last year, is now running at between 38 and 39% in the polls. And there have been some really very big all-out attacks on Salvini. And it's quite interesting. One of the accusations that Mr. Conte made, he said that Salvini's goal was to challenge the European Union's fiscal rules. So the Italian government falls down and breaks and may face a possible election over its attitude towards European Union rules. Isn't very different in Italy, is it, to what it is in this country at the moment? My bet is there will be Italian elections this year. Whether Salvini, with other centre-right parties, can form a coalition or not, I don't know, but I think he probably can. And I do, in the longer term, think that Brussels' biggest problem is not Brexit. Brussels' biggest problem is actually going to be Italy, where after 20 years of membership of the euro, there has been zero growth in that country. Back to Boris. Andrew says, why are you giving Boris a kicking? Isn't he trying to get the UK out? I thought that's what you wanted, Nigel. Andrew, I don't want to pay 39 billion. Andrew, I want to take back our fishing waters, not surrender them, as this probably will do. Andrew, I want to end free movement, not extend it for goodness knows how long. Andrew, I don't want the foreign court to have any jurisdiction over this country. Andrew, the political declaration means the EU don't have to give us a sausage. They can take our money, they can go on making our rules without us having any say. Andrew, this withdrawal agreement, even without the backstop, is the worst deal in history. And I hope Boris is doing this simply as a ruse. I hope he's doing it so he can say, look, I tried to be reasonable, but nothing could be done. Let's go to Jeff, who's a new caller from Basildon. Good evening, Jeff.
Hello, Nigel.
So, what do you make of Boris?
I think Boris, basically, I think he's doing okay at the moment. But I think, personally, I don't think we're coming out of the European Union.
Why not, Jeff?
I think, personally, they're just going to hold us to ransom. And I just don't think we're going to get out. And all Brexiteers want us to get out. And I just don't think we're going to get anywhere. The European Union just don't want us to leave.
Well, you could argue, Jeff, that the 39 billion is a ransom, but we haven't got to pay it, have we?
No, we ain't got to pay it, but they look at that and going, well, you owe us a bill. It's like paying a bill at a restaurant, and that's how they see it, basically.
Well, Jeff, I have to say, my view on the way he's handled this, and there's a guy on Facebook called Chris has just said to me, until the UK makes it clear to the EU in writing that we're prepared to walk away and keep our 39 billion, the EU will do nothing. That makes sense to me, Jeff. You say to them, you ain't getting your money, you're not getting any money until you start to make a few concessions. And Boris, Jeff, could have done this in this letter. He hasn't done so. Do you feel slightly disappointed in him?
I am at the moment. But I just really don't think the European Union is just going to let us go, period.
Well,
they're going to keep us taking our money all the time.
Well, we've got to be stronger, Jeff, haven't we?
Yep.
We've got to be stronger. Keep the faith, Jeff.
Parliament are not going to let us go, period.
Well, maybe the UK Parliament won't. I get that. Jeff, I thank you. As Jeff there, very depressed, doesn't think we're leaving. I want to hear from somebody upbeat who tells me that actually Boris is playing a blinder here. You expected all along for him to say that leaving with a withdrawal agreement was the highest priority. Come on, someone ring me up, cheer me up. 0345 6060 973. Andrew on Facebook says, maybe Boris has realised how difficult a no deal would be. Paul says it's all a ruse to deter Conservative MPs from voting against the government in a no-confidence vote. Boris and Jacob voted for the withdrawal agreement at the third time of asking because they thought they could reverse it at a later date once May had vacated. Oh, Paul, I'm not buying into that. OK, we surrendered, we gave in because we thought it was best to live to fight another day. I really don't get that because actually, Paul, that withdrawal agreement, that new European binding international treaty could have passed, couldn't it? It could have been the votes of Boris and Jacob that passed it. And remember, Paul, the backstop was in it. The very thing that Boris today tells us is so terrible. In fact, he even tells us that it threatens the Good Friday peace agreement. James is calling from Hornchurch. Good evening, James.
Good evening. Yes, I don't trust him. I don't trust him. He ain't, like you say, like the old dodgy vote when he done that third vote. Do you remember?
Yep. Oh, I do.
It's all too good to be true because ever since he's got in, he hasn't said. He's saying all the right things. Everything he said, I thought, "Cool, this is sounding marvellous." He actually sounds like the real deal.
Yes.
I think he sounds like a snide Trump and a snide version of you. He's like copied. He's like a carbon trying to copy your style. You know what I mean?
James, I did see him photographed with a pint of beer in a pub as well.
Oh, God, blimey. We'll be trying to get on next.
So, James, is it all front then with Boris, in your opinion?
I believe so. I just find it hard to trust them. Like we've been had over by the Tory party so much.
I know.
And we was all like, that's it, we're done.
Yeah.
And he's come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And it's all too good to be true, Nigel.
James, the number of times they've said to me, "It's okay now, Nigel. You can go home. We're in charge of this now. It's all going to be fine."
Don't worry, Nigel, we've got this.
I know. Bill Cash told me that 25 years ago. I've been told it again and again and again. James, all I can say to you is, I sincerely hope you're wrong, and I hope Boris delivers on the 31st of October. But like you, I've got reservations. Great call. Thank you very much indeed. Marcus disagrees. No, he says, Nigel, we all need to get behind Boris so we can negotiate from a position of unity and strength. All right, Marcus, go on, Boris. Just give away 39 billion. That'll be absolutely fine. No, Marcus, I'm sorry. I have been praiseworthy of him since he became Prime Minister. Up until yesterday, I'd been saying he's saying all the right things. It's now just a question of does he have the courage to see this through in what would be an epic Parliament. Well, it's going to be an epic parliamentary battle, whatever happens, I guess. But I really, really do, after this letter, have quite grave reservations, and I think rightly so. Paul is a new caller from Hull. Good evening, Paul.
Hi, Nigel.
So, what do you make of Boris?
Nigel, I think Boris is playing a blinder. Whatever happens, he's going to come out of this the winner. He's went to Europe, looked strong doing it. So if he doesn't get the deal, he's looked like he tried. If he does get the deal, he's a hero. But in the process of that, he's made Labour basically self-destruct. He's made the Liberal Democrats look foolish because Labour's now trying to take over the Remain side. So he's wiped out the competition. And no matter whether he gets a deal or not, he's going to look like the hero of the hour.
Well, I would say this to you, Paul. If he gets the withdrawal agreement minus the backstop, it is still not something the British public are going to support because it's a rotten deal.
I don't know, Nigel. I think it's been going on for so long now. I think we'd take a bit more compromise than what we would have.
That's an interesting point. That people are so sick to death of it. They just want resolution. So they might, and even Parliament might, support. Even though it's Brexit in name only, they might go for it. No, Paul, I think, to be honest, you do make a very powerful point. I mean, I kind of hope you're wrong, but you make a powerful point. Maybe we've just had enough of it. But Paul, 39 billion, it's a lot of money, isn't it?
It's a lot of money, Nigel. I think when it comes to the money, I've heard somewhere that we've already paid some of it as the delaying tactics are going on. Some of that money's already getting paid anyway.
Well, and of course, the longer the transition is, the more we will pay in. And so you're right.
So it's kind of in Europe's interest to string this.
Isn't it ever? Isn't it ever?
The Liberal Democrats.
But if Boris, I promise you, Paul, even if there is short-term relief, that Boris gets us Brexit in name only, the thought that we're stuck in a transition period, that they're making rules over which we have no say, and then they won't give us anything for the future because they're not bound to. If Boris gets short-term relief from Brexit in name only, Paul, I promise you, that's all it'll be. Paul, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Interesting what Paul says, isn't it? That maybe Brexiteers would be prepared to accept less because they've had enough of it. It's an interesting point. I'm not convinced he's right. You tell me what you think. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here at LBC at 6:45, and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
The Prime Minister says despite EU officials dismissing his letter calling for the backstop to be scrapped in a new Brexit deal, he's still optimistic and will go at it with oomph to get an agreement. A 20-year-old man's appeared in court and denied murdering PC Andrew Harper in Berkshire last Thursday. Rail passengers using the East Coast Main Line are being advised not to travel this weekend, which is a bank holiday in England, because of engineering works. LBC weather: showers easing in the northeast of England, leaving a dry night ahead for most. Some rain for Wales and the southwest, a low of 7 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm J-Louise Knight, and expect delays around Lewisham. The A21 Molesworth Street has just been closed southbound with an investigation. It's already causing huge delays on all surrounding routes. Things have improved heading out of town on the A13 though. The accident at the Lodge Avenue flyover's gone. It's still pretty heavy though back to the Canning Town flyover. The A40 slow out of town towards Medway Underpass at Perryvale after a collapsed manhole earlier was blocking one lane. It has been fixed, so all lanes have reopened, and it's still worth avoiding the high road in Loughton because of emergency repairs causing huge delays.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Is Boris Johnson right to call the backstop anti-democratic? Should frontline police officers be routinely armed with tasers? And first, the big stories of the day in the news hour.
Clive Bull on LBC.
You know their names. Now, find out who they are. Listen to Full Disclosure with James O'Brien, an insightful podcast featuring rare, candid conversations with the biggest names in politics, entertainment, and sport. And while James gives you a look into their lives, keep an eye on yours with Blink, wireless home security cameras you can monitor on your smartphone. Full Disclosure with James O'Brien. New episodes every Monday, thanks to Blink home security cameras.
Mate, this van's suspension is rubbish.
Tell me about it.
Even the radio's at it.
I know, but I'd get nothing if I scrapped it.
No, you can get at least £2,000 off a new Ford for it.
You're kidding?
He's not. With Ford's new for old scrappage scheme, you can get between £2,000 and £6,750 off a new Ford van, plus 0% APR representative on Ford Acquire, if you scrap an eligible vehicle with us responsibly. Ford Commercial Vehicles, backbone of Britain. Search Ford Scrappage. Exclusions apply. Contract by 30th of September and registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. Age and ownership criteria apply to scrappage vehicles subject to status. Free post for credit. Deposit restrictions apply.
I'm sorry. You have progressive memory loss.
When you hear these words, the outlook is bleak, but we're working to change that. We're Recognition Health, the brain and mind experts, and we're running clinical studies in London and Guildford. If you volunteer, you'll receive free access to a new generation medication as well as comprehensive medical care. With your help, we can change the future of MCI, as in mild cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's disease.
You have progressive memory loss. But here's what we can do.
To find out more about Recognition Health and taking part, go to brainandmindexperts.com.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube.
And decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle. And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of off-peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. £1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
William, Pamela and Anthony were sold investments by banks and ended up losing money. Luckily, they contacted Goodwin Barrett and were able to claim back a total of £65,500. If you've lost money on an investment sold by a bank, even if you no longer have it or the paperwork, just text SOLD to 66777 to discover how much you could be owed. That's SOLD to 66777. You don't need a claims management company to make a complaint, and if unsuccessful, you can refer it free to the Financial Ombudsman.
The toughest jobs, or the easy ones, the long journeys or the shorter runs, transporting the big, carrying the small, an iconic van that does it all, negotiating traffic or the open road, handling load after load after load. A project started, a job concluded, with 3 years roadside assistance and 2 free services included. The Volkswagen Transporter for just £259 a month on contract hire. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, working with you. Business users only, no ownership, excluding VAT at 20%, 48-month contract hire, £1,554 initial rental. Exclusions, restrictions and T's and C's apply. Service plan covers first 2 consecutive services. Available until the 30th of September 2019. Volkswagen Finance.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Does Boris Johnson's letter to Donald Tusk say that he's actually going soft? Because he says his highest priority is a withdrawal agreement. I'm a bit surprised. Before I get back to that, a very interesting story, and one that I think you're going to see much more of as time develops. Northamptonshire Police, where they have suffered a 50% increase in attacks on police officers in just the last 2 years. I mean, astonishing figures. horrendous the way in which law and order is breaking down right across this country. And their Chief Constable, Nick Adderley, has done something that I've been advocating here on LBC and elsewhere very strongly for the last 2 years. He has said that tasers will now be issued to every front-line officer in Northamptonshire. He makes it clear it's not a decision that he's taken lightly, but I have to say, I think it makes sense. I think all of our police need to be armed to some degree. I really do. And I promise you that will not be the last police force making that decision. I cannot get out of my mind the thought of those terrorists on London Bridge and that very, very brave police officer confronting machete-wielding terrorists with a truncheon. And frankly, had he had a taser, I mean, some would argue a gun, but let's just stick for the moment with a taser. He would have stopped those barbarians going in to Borough Market and killing more people. I feel very, very strongly about it indeed, as I do about Brexit. And I'm worried, is Boris going soft or is it all just a ruse? We're off to Stockholm in Sweden to speak to Stephen, who's a new caller. Good evening, Stephen.
Hi, Nigel. How are you doing?
We're doing fine. So, where's Boris going with this, Stephen?
Well, I'm staggered as to what you think he's going soft with, considering this is within a 24-hour period where he has confirmed that there will be no freedom of movement come the 1st of November for anyone within the EU. How far exactly do you want him to go?
You don't believe that,
what is the end
Stephen,
game?
you don't believe Boris would end free movement of people, do you? I don't.
So I then question, Nigel, what is your end game? What is it exactly you want? No, what is it you want?
Brexit.
How? Yeah, but what does that mean? What do you mean? You don't want the freedom of movement.
It means we're not governed by foreign courts. We make our own laws. We control our own borders. We make our own decisions, obviously.
Which laws? Which laws don't we control?
About 75% of them.
Okay. So when it comes to freedom of movement, do you want that or not?
No, of course not. Absolutely not. Ridiculous. Why?
Okay,
why should we, Stephen? Why should we prejudice? Why should we prejudice? Why should we You don't want to listen? That's fine, or we can try.
No, I'm listening.
Why should we prejudice against people from all over the world in favour of people just because geographically they come from Europe? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it does make a little bit of sense, considering they are geographically so much closer to us than everybody else and are the biggest single market in the world.
Well, Stephen, we have...
It seems like, to be honest, from my point of view, it seems like from someone on your position who has advocated leaving for so long, which is fine, that's we're entitled to have different opinions. You've advocated for leaving for so long.
Yeah.
We're so close to the cusp of leaving, but that doesn't make you happy. So my question to you is, what is it that you want?
Right. What I want is what Boris has been telling me for the first few weeks as Prime Minister. We're leaving, do or die. We'll leave with no deal if necessary. And now what I see in the last 24 hours, Stephen, is yes, on the one hand, Priti Patel saying we're ending free movement. Yes, Stephen Barclay saying we'll stop sending, ministers and advisors to many Brussels meetings. On the one hand, I hear that, but when I look at the letter, Stephen, Boris wants us to go into a new European treaty, a new withdrawal agreement, albeit without the backstop. And I think we won't have made the clean break we need to benefit. That's the point I'm making, Stephen. I think freed from this, we can do better.
Okay, and so let's as a hypothetical, no deal happens.
Yeah.
And things don't go swimmingly. Who do you blame then? If the economy doesn't boom like you think it will, if immigration doesn't improve like you think it will, do you still blame the EU for that then?
No. That's the point, isn't it? Then you can start blaming your own politicians and you can hire and fire the people who really affect your life. And the one thing, Stephen...
So every problem in the UK right now is because of the UK
of course
government
not.
Or because of the EU?
But I tell you what, Stephen, you living in Sweden or you living in the UK, you cannot vote for anybody that can change a single piece of European legislation. And that is where democratically...
Well, of course we can.
Can you? How?
Of course we can. Well, because every single country in the EU can veto any law.
No, they can't. Stephen, I'm sorry, matey. We could have had this conversation 30 years ago. Not now. There are very few vetoes left, and the aim is to eradicate more of them. Stephen, I'm going to move on and speak to Drew in Brighton and see what Drew's got to say. Drew, what did you make of Boris's letter?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction, especially seen as recently with Stephen Barclay ending all the laws coming into force in Britain. That's a perfect step in the right direction. Although it's not teetotal and out, but if I was Juncker, I'd be sweating under the collar because it's very clear they're not getting their way anymore.
Well, I might have been until yesterday, but I'd have read this letter and thought, oh, whoopee-woo. They're not threatening me with anything, and they actually want to have a new withdrawal treaty just with an amendment to the backstop. Surely they'd be delighted with this, Drew.
Well, in many ways, but the fact that both David Davis and Boris Johnson were pushing for so long that the technology could replace the backstop. It's okay, we can use technology.
Yeah.
And now this is Boris's perfect opportunity to put something in place, give them an idea of something other than the backstop, for them to therefore open the withdrawal agreement or tweak it at least to include this step that he was pushing for 2 years now.
Well, Drew, I hope you're right, but I think we're getting some very mixed messages currently coming out of this government. I believe that most people that voted for Boris Johnson did not think he would reheat Mrs May's withdrawal agreement. He says he wants a withdrawal agreement, not the withdrawal agreement. But, Drew, apart from the backstop, the other 99% is exactly the same. So I think it is confusing for everybody. Drew, I thank you. I've got time for one last quick call, which is Ian from Huntingdon. Good evening, Ian.
Oh, hello, Nigel. Yeah, I think it's worth looking at some of the detail behind this. The sticking point in Parliament is the backstop. The sticking point in the EU is the principle of opening with a withdrawal agreement. If Boris can prise open the withdrawal agreement using the backstop as the lever, everything else is then on the table again. Remember, nothing's agreed until it's all agreed. So he's just got to open. If he can open
the idea, Ian, that with 70-odd days to go, that you can open up the whole blooming thing for renegotiation, there would be no chance of us leaving on the 31st of October.
Well, that's the point. I actually don't think there is much of a chance of us leaving on the 31st of October.
Oh, no. Why? Why not? Why is it so difficult?
Oh, because I think Parliament will stop whatever Boris wants to do. That's why Boris is going for the minimum possible change. But once the withdrawal agreement is open, then the political declaration can widen its scope as well. If he's really committed, I have no idea if he is. I'm sceptical as you are.
I get what you say, Ian. I get what you say, but that would mean another 6-month extension, and I don't think for the Conservative Party that would be all that healthy. Ian, I thank you. I thank all of you for your thoughts and your calls. Some of you think Boris is playing a clever game. He can go and come back and say, look, I try to be reasonable. These people were awful. We simply have to leave. I have to say, Boris, who voted for the third time for Mrs May's treaty, I think this letter is the real Boris Johnson. Whether he can get much give, he'll get some, I think, from Brussels. Whether it's enough to get through the House of Commons, we'll have to see. I feel a bit disappointed this evening, but I'll be back tomorrow doing my best. And at 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. Coming up, a police force has decided to issue every frontline officer with a taser after an alarming rise in attacks on emergency services. Is it time for all officers to now be armed with at least a taser? We'll talk about that later. Also, back to Brexit, and negotiations are still stuck on the issue of the Northern Ireland border. Is the